Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this video, I'm going to do a review of the Glenmorangie 12-year-old Lasanta Highland single malt Scotch whiskey. Now, when I began my whiskey journey back in 2016, the first full bottles I ever bought were Glenmorangie and Ardbeg. I was studying for wine exams with the Wine Educational Trust. One of the units was on spirits. You may have already heard this story before. So I was buying these little minis because I was not into spirits, not into whiskey. And there was a Macallan 12-year-old that really caught my attention, that made me go, wow. And then, you know, the rest is history, and I really got into whiskey. But I had 104 mini bottles that I had shipped over from the UK. So the first full bottles that I bought were, as I said before, Glenmorangie and Ardbeg. And the reason why I bought those is because a representative was doing a tasting at a shop in the Bay Area from LVMH, Moet Hennessy, Louis Vuitton. So both Ardbeg Distillery on Islay and Glenmorangie are owned by LVMH. Really like the whiskeys, and I thought this is a huge contrast between distilleries. You know, Islay is these peaty, meaty, smoky, barbecue whiskeys, a little heavier. Glenmorangie is ethereal, delicate, light, non-peated, coming from real tall stills. And they tend to emphasize a bourbon cask as a baseline. That's their 10-year-old. First and second fill bourbon cask for the 10-year-old. And then they, with the Lasanta, they put in a sherry cask with the Quinta Rubin port cask, and on and on and on. So they have a baseline of the 10-year-old and then additional aging in other casks to produce the rest of their line. I think it's an absolutely brilliant profile to have in terms of a business. Completely opposite and contrast distilleries that are very complementary in terms of if you want to have a variety of aromas and flavors in your whiskey bar, you can just buy from these two distilleries. I remember being impressed by Glenmorangie and really liked them, but it was real early in my career. My original review for those first bottles I bought of the Quinta Rubin and the Lasanta is no longer on my channel. One of the things you learn in being a whiskey tuber is not only about whiskey, but you learn how to make better videos. So those videos are no longer on my channel. I thought, okay, well, this is a good opportunity to revisit these bottles, because those bottles are gone, to buy new bottles and the ones with the new labels. Now, a lot of people say, I don't like the new labels, yada, yada, yada. I agree, I like the more classic labels, but even those classic labels had changed a little bit. Sometimes they had the number 10, sometimes they spelled out 10 for the 10-year-old. These are big, bold, easy to read. You know, if you're at a shop and you're looking at a long line of bottles at a whiskey shop, these are easy to spot. You know, you're going to see them right away versus something that was real small, fine print before. Also, the numbers are larger on the bottles. I think that's brilliant. They've maintained the shape of the bottle. I was watching another video. It wasn't a whiskey vid channel, but it was a round table discussion, and a bunch of guys were talking. And on the table in front of them was this bottle faced like this. And I noticed, and of course, on the screen, it's only this big. And right away, I know, oh, that is a Glenmorangie bottle. Just by the shape, I recognize it. So, brilliance in terms of just getting an image across to viewers, hey, that they recognize your brand just by the shape of the bottle. And then, it makes commercial sense to have bigger, bolder lettering that is easier to read from a distance and perhaps help people spell it. But, that being said, I still like that classic style original bottles, but let's move on, because ultimately none of that really matters. What matters is what's in here. Now, you could have a whiskey, you know, they take it from cask strength, which might be 63.5, somewhere around there, 60 plus, and they're bringing it down to bottle strength. There is a tipping point in which you can go too far and bring it down to bottle strength. If you're bringing it down to 50, 46, 43, or 40, to where you put way too much water in the soup. You've just watered down the soup, and now it seems like you're just drinking hot water with a few vegetables and a couple noodles thrown in it. You know what I mean? Just too much water in there. And you can do the same thing with a whiskey where you've gone too far, and it's weak, it's anemic, and it's just meh, right? And you can tell, the producer's just trying to make an extra buck, try to stretch that cask as far as you can go to make buck. I'm happy to say, Glenmorangie has not done that. One of the ways in which they've maintained the quality on these whiskeys is, I think, it's the quality of the casks. Now, there are three things that are going to affect the quality of the whiskey in relation to the cask. One is quality casks. If you have a tired cask that's been used too many times, then there's nothing to extract out of the cask. If you don't have enough maturation time, and so there has been enough time for the spirit to engage and interact with the cask. And third is the climate. If it's been too cold, if it's in too cold of an area of the warehouse, then again, it hasn't been able to interact with the cask. So quality cask, time with the cask, and the climate. Scotland, in general, is a cool climate region in comparison to, say, a lot of places here in the United States, like Texas and Kentucky and so forth. You can also tell, or at least I've learned to tell, when the cask, you can tell it's been a wet cask, it's been a seasoned cask, and it's not that the spirit is engaging with the cask and extracting sherry that has spent time in the cask and engaged with the wood. You're more or less taking your spirit and washing out the cask of the remnant that was left behind. So you're not really engaging with the oak all that much to extract what has been embedded into the cask. It's just a wet cask. And you can tell it's a certain fakery to it. And it just seems like somebody just took some sherry and poured it into the whiskey. Now, it can still taste good. It can still taste spicy, and you get all the dried black fruit notes and all that. But you can tell there isn't the same synthesis and harmony and engagement and interaction between the spirit and the cask notes. It just seems like a lot of the cask note and the spirit hasn't really integrated in with some of those, with the spirit. All right, so let's get on to this. 43% alcohol by volume. A lot of us, and myself included, you see 43, you see 40, and you can stick your nose up at it. And you're going to go, eh. Or you go, oh, that's a beginner's whiskey. That's a beginner's whiskey. I got to say, and generally that tends to be true. I got to say, Glenmorangie with these bottles, and I think is an exception to that generality. I mean, I have had high ABV whiskeys, 50 plus, all the way up to, say, 60, that were too dang young. They had too much of that new make character. They weren't particularly non-age statement whiskeys that haven't had enough time, enough engagement with the cask. And the producer thinks they can make up for a lack of engagement with the cask by just going hyper on the ABV. And a lot of people will like that, particularly if it's peated. You can put, if it's peated, a lot of the peat smoke will sort of cover up some of the new makey characteristics. If you're not familiar with what new make is like, it can be like a melon. It can have like a saccharine or fake sugar character to it. I'm not a big fan of super young peated whiskeys. If you like those, knock yourself out. But I don't like that new makey characteristic. And you can kind of tell when someone it's like putting lipstick on a pig, thinking you're going to make it look pretty. No, it doesn't. All right. So that being said, I've got this bottle all the way down to here. And I've really, really, really been enjoying this. Yes, like any other bottle, it opens up more when you get past the neck pour. But I would say even from the neck pour, it was really, really, really nice. The main thing I want to say that it's impressing about this whiskey is this. Because I know right now, there's people who are disagreeing with me. And I haven't given a single note yet. And yet they're already disagreeing with me and watching this. How far can you have your nose from the glass and pick up aromas from it? How far from the glass can you have your nose and still pick up stuff? And what I'm finding is these Glenmorangie whiskeys, and going back to them, because we're in 2024 at the time of this recording, going back to 2016, 2017, when I was engaging with the earlier bottles, so it's been a few years. And so I'm going with my memory of the earlier bottles versus now, is the nose on these are absolutely fantastic. I don't have to bury my nose in this. They're very expressive. And I'm getting a lot Different aromas. Okay, there's the typical sherry notes: figs, dates, raisins, that dried orange character, a lot of spice, cinnamon, vanilla. There's almost, it's like a brown bread character, sultanas, apple pie. Just, I mean, a very small amount of anise or licorice. Just, it's real faint. So that slight herbal character on the palate. Another thing that surprises me, it's not thick. It's not as mouth-coating as a higher ABV whiskey. But for 43, it has a presence. What I do to sort of judge that is allow whiskey to just sort of sit on your palate without swishing, without moving around, and how far does it go beyond just sitting in the middle of your palate? How mouth coating is it? This has a lot of presence for something that's only 43% alcohol by volume. It doesn't have a whole lot of transition, not a whole lot of change from the front and the middle and the finish. What's up in front and the middle and the finish is pretty much the same. It's those dried black fruit notes, it's the cinnamon, it's the orange, it's the citrus. There's a little bit of like apple pie character, and on the back end, a lot of cinnamon, nutmeg, a hint of clove, just a little bit of clove, and a little bit of anise or black licorice on the back end. So the finish is really, really nice. As I'm talking now, I'm still tasting it. It's got a real nice long finish. I really like this whiskey. You know, as a whiskey tuber, drink a lot of whiskeys. Doing probably 30, 50, I don't know, something a year. Plus going to events, plus hanging out with friends, and so forth. So you taste a lot of whiskeys. You can get a little burnout from high ABV all the time, and it seems like a lot of work to try to deal with them. And you know, don't get me wrong. Most of my top 10 whiskeys of the year are those real high ABV whiskeys. If you go and watch my top 10 for 2023, they're all near cask strength. But there's times in which you want a whiskey that isn't tiresome, that has a lot of flavor, that it's going to stick around. You can enjoy watching a movie, reading a book, maybe you're typing away on your computer, whatever else you're doing. You're having conversations with family and friends, and maybe it's a pre-dinner whiskey or an after-dinner whiskey, kind of hanging out, and you can still taste it, and because it has a longer finish, and without having to go back to it right away. And you kind of like, when you finish the glass, I would like another one, but I don't want to get hammered. I don't want to get, a lot high ABV whiskey can also be tiring. It just makes you physically tired, right? Because there's a anesthetic quality to alcohol, obviously. So you don't want that either. So you want something that you can go back to and have a little bit more without getting anesthetized and without getting schlammoed. Kind of the same with wines. There's a lot of this conversation in the wine world as well, particularly sommeliers, is to be able to have a dinner with a real nice wine that pairs well with the food, and you can have more than one glass, more than maybe even two glasses, maybe even with a friend or something, kill a bottle without getting schlammoed. It's not about getting hammered. It's about enjoying the flavor. So the criteria is not the ABV it says on the bottle, is does it deliver the flavor? And I think this whiskey does. Now, $60, I mean, prices have been going up and up and up and up and up. So that's kind of a little nuts, but not much I can do about that. It doesn't do any good to complain about it. I wish this whiskey was under $50. I wish it was under $50. In my neighborhood, it's about $60. It'll probably be different, maybe higher or lower in your neighborhood. That being said, I think it's a really nice whiskey. This is going to be one I will probably always have on my shelf as a go-to. Doesn't require a whole lot of thinking. It's just a nice, approachable whiskey. I want to give it in terms of score, I'm going to go solid 89 points. What would I want? Get over 90? Probably, a little higher ABV, a little bit more oomph in the mid-palate. The mid-palate is there, it's very nice, but a lot more oomph in the mid-palate. The strength of this whiskey, in terms of the flavors, is on the finish. on the real nice finish, and on the nose. I would say it's the nose and the finish are the big sellers on this one. On the mid palate, it's just kind of okay. A little bit more oomph in the mid palate, and that would probably take a little bit more ABV. Alrighty, so this is a well reviewed whiskey. There are, a lot of videos out there. If you tried the Glenmorangie Lasanta and you have a different opinion, let me know down below. If you agree with me, let me know. If you have had an older bottle like I have and a newer bottle and you think there's been some changes, let me know down below. I'm interested in the conversation about Glenmorangie. I will be doing a review of a new bottle of the Quinta Ruben, which is now a 14-year-old. It used to be a 12-year-old. It's now a 14-year-old. And I'm looking forward to that one because that's also a real nice whiskey. All right, that's it for this review. If you subscribe to this channel, I want to thank you very much. If you've not yet subscribed but you like watching my videos, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe, ring the bell to be notified for when I go live or post a new video. Until next time, Slanja. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.